episode of Modern Mom Probs Live. I am your host, Tara Clark. I am joined by one of my favorite people on the planet, Katie Mulvaney. Hello.
Hi.
We had so much fun on our very first episode together that we decided to make this a regular thing. So Katie and I are going to be joining you most Thursday nights at 8:30. And tonight, we're talking about a sort of private topic, something that I went through and now Katie's going through herself, which is how to get your toddler to stop nursing. As far as like topics, I usually do more like broad, general sweeping kind of things, but today we're getting kind of like down into the nitty gritty, and I'm going to share my story with you. Katie's going to share her experience as well, and then we're going to just kind of like talk through it and like really get to the bottom of this particular modern mom prob. Katie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm very excited. And as you said, this is a problem came up because I asked your advice on it the other day because I knew you had a similar situation several years ago. So yeah, definitely excited to get to the bottom of this topic.
Yeah. So we had, for those who aren't familiar, Katie and I have been friends for 30 something years, a very long time.
Almost 40.
Almost 40 years, like literally like a very, very long time. And just last week you were on my podcast. Listen to my Modern Mom podcast if you don't. So before we had started recording, Katie was like, Tara, like, how did you get Jack to stop nursing? And I was like, that's an excellent question. And then I was like, you know what? That is our next Fireside show. That's going to be our next Fireside chat. And so here we are, Thursday night, 8:30, talking about this. So
I want to hold my breath waiting for the answer. I can't wait to hear it.
You waited a whole week for this now.
Exactly.
So I want to share my breastfeeding story. And because I feel like that really puts the whole thing into perspective. And then I'll get to what you were waiting for, the answer at the end.
Great, perfect.
So when Jack was born, I thought like, oh yeah, I'm going to breastfeed. It's going to be natural and it's going to be easy. And I'm just going to like pick it up right away. And everything's going to be all good. It didn't go down that way. I wish that it did. But so this is how it started. He's born in the hospital. Fine. The day he was born, I think like they kept him out too long and his blood sugar dropped. And so then therefore he had to go to the NICU for a few days. So he wasn't with me in the hospital because he was in the NICU and he was getting formula there at that point, which is fine. And I had a lactation consultant come into the room and she like squeezed my breast so hard. And she's like, this is how you do it. And she like squeezed it. And it was like so painful. She squeezed it and she like put him, like when he was in the room with me at that point, she had like put him on it and it hurt so badly. And I was like, this isn't natural. This can't possibly be what breastfeeding is like. This is barbaric. The way she grabbed me and pulled me and ripped me, I was like, this is barbaric. And so while I was still in the hospital, there was like a lactation circle where we like all the new moms who like just given birth and like our bodies are tired and hurting. We all got together and like learned how to breastfeed and sort of like talked about that a little bit. And she showed us like the right way to do it. And thank God she didn't like grab me too hard at that point because we were in a room full of people. But I was like, okay, so like this is how it should be. It should be easy. So he's not really, nursing well at the hospital, but I'm like, he just got born. So he's just trying to figure out life and I'm trying to figure out life. I get him home and it's like really hit or miss. And I get so nervous that he's not taking enough milk that I start pumping so that I'm able to like see and like quantify the amount of milk. So if like they had like the little like Mandela bottles and like you're able to see he's getting like 4 ounces. And I'm like, okay, I know I could pump 4 ounces. He's getting 4 ounces. And we did that for a very long time, like months and months. So like I would feed him and then I would pump. And so it would go back and forth. And then I think when he was about 3 months old, we had traveled to Florida because my husband had a conference. And so we just tagged along. And I gave Jack formula for the first time. And so then I was both breastfeeding and pumping and introduced formula all within that time. And so we were doing all of those things, and it worked, and it was fine. I mean, primarily I was trying to nurse, but again, like having the formula was great. Having the pumping, was good too. I could still hear the sound of the pump in my mind. Like, I don't know if you ever pumped, Katie.
Oh,
but
yeah.
It's like, wee, whoa, whoa. It's like that, like, whoosher kind of like sound. Like, I still hear it like 10 years later.
In my nightmares, no.
In your nightmare, like every mom hears that, like in their neck, it's like whoosh, 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 whoosh.
So you watch your nipple get pulled into the machine.
Yeah, it like pulls, it squeezes. You're like, how does my body do that? But it does it, and it gets like sucked into the thing and then latched back. I'm sorry, this might be like too much information for people who actually aren't breastfeeding or don't care, but it's fine. So then, a year goes by, and I said to myself, we're going to nurse for a year. That's it. That's going to be my cutoff. Well, a year came and went, and by that time, he was a confident nurser, breastfeeder, like baby, and I was a confident breastfeeder. And so I was like, okay, let's see. It goes a little bit longer, 14 months, 16 months, 18 months. Long story short, he's 2.5 years. He's still nursing. I know that I also was an extended nurser myself because one, my mom told me, but I think that I also vaguely have like a very deep memory of nursing when I was little. So I was probably about 3 when like my mom finally like packed it in. And so, like I said, he was 2.5, and I said to myself, like, he's going to nursery school. We got to cut it down. I love cuddling him. I love the feeling of like him on my chest. But then he would like see me and be like, milk, and like I was instantly like how he got to sleep or how he took a nap or like he was bored or he felt sad or like whatever it was. And like that's just what that became. And I was like, I love being what you need, but like also at the same time, like I think we could kind of like move on at that point. So what we had to do, and now this is the answer that you were waiting for a week and a half. So what we had to do was just really limit the durations of the times that when he was nursing. If he would nurse for like, I don't know, an hour, it seems like a long time, but if he would nurse for a long time, then you just kept cutting it shorter and shorter by like 10, 15 minutes. And then ultimately maybe he'd be nursing for like 5 minutes and be like, okay, that's it, we're done now. And then pack it up and then that's it. And then eventually the times just got less and less and less, and then he weaned off. But it took him a long time to get to the point to wean off. And like I said, maybe 2.5 was the point where we fully weaned, but it was probably from like 2 to 2.5 where I was trying to wean.
It's good to know because my daughter just turned 2 like 2 weeks ago. So I'll buckle in for a little longer, I guess. Right?
Buckle in for a little bit longer. But like I said, I want to hear like your breastfeeding story and sort of like where you are now with her. And like I said, we could sort of like talk through those things to how to try to get it from, every day, every 5 minutes. I mean, there were days like when he didn't feel well, like I felt like I was nursing him like every 5 minutes.
Right. Or teething. That's the big one. And I'm excited because she's getting her last 2 teeth right now. So I'm like, oh, maybe this will be the end of it. So we'll see. But yeah. I doubt that's going to be the big breaking point, but we'll see. But to share a little bit about my background. This is my second child. So I breastfed my son as well till he was 17 months old. And the reason I stopped was because I wanted to have another baby, and I did IVF, and they don't even let you consider doing any injections or anything unless you're done breastfeeding. So the first step we had to do was to cut him off. But he was a little bit easier for 2 reasons. One, I gave him pea milk. I didn't even give him cow's milk. I gave him pea milk, and my pediatrician recommended it.
That's awesome. But first of all, I'm sorry. I got to go back to that. I didn't even know you could get pea milk. But then also, I recently started eating like this vegan ice cream, which is made from like pea milk. And so now it makes sense. Like, so yeah, of course you can. So
yeah, I didn't really know much about it either. But so we gave him that. He just took that every night instead. And I think there was maybe like one rough night, and then we were fine. So the second thing that I've learned is from that situation is that I think around 17, 18 months, that's when you need to stop. Because I feel like once you kind of pass that and they start becoming more aware and more demanding, it gets a little bit more difficult. So my daughter does not drink any milks. I can't get her to drink. I've tried every.
So she wasn't drinking anything at that point, like aside from breast milk. She's not drinking pea milk, goat milk, cow milk, oat milk, anything.
Oh, nothing at all.
Okay.
Like she does not like it, which is what it is. But I think that's one of the reasons that we struggle a little bit. But I think, it's interesting because, you said with the lactation consults in the hospital, and I have to say both my experiences with lactation consult in the hospital were really rough. And I think one of the reasons why, especially the first time I was doing it, she came in, she was diagnosing my son with all sorts of like jaw problems and ear problems and lips and tongues. And then the pediatrician comes in.
They're literally like 4 hours old, right? I mean, they literally just got born. Their face is still just kind of like coming back, like their head is like popping back to a normal thing, and then they come in like a whirlwind. But okay, keep going.
Try to get breathing down. Then
you're like, what is this new world filled with air? And then all of a sudden, this lady comes in like a I don't know, Gestapo. It's crazy.
She diagnoses it with all these things, and the pediatrician comes in. Me and my husband were like, "Oh my God, there's so many things wrong with him." And the pediatrician, no, he's fine. Just don't listen to any of that. So I was like, great, okay. So I thought after dealing with this woman that he was it was going downhill. He was a terrible breastfeeder, all this stuff. And then it comes to pass that a lot of babies struggle over the first 2 or 3 days to figure it out. That's part of it, right? But they don't really tell you that. And I'm lucky
they don't. And then they make us feel like failures, like immediately. Like we just became mothers. And then all of a sudden we're like failing at being mothers because we can't feed our children in the first 2 days that they're born.
Right. And they make it sound like it's going to be so easy. Not the lactation consultants, but everyone. I feel like, just breastfeed.
Society in general makes you think that it's like, this is super easy. Like you just pick it up. Like he's not even getting it, and he's the baby that's getting the food, and like he's having a hard time. So it takes time. And for any new mother out there that's watching this, like it takes time. It's challenging, and not every body can breastfeed. And there was a time where I even said to myself, like, I don't even know if I could do this, which is why I started pumping and all of that kind of stuff. It was so much at that time to really comprehend. Like, I feel like of all the things when my son was first born that like really almost put me over the edge, it was feeding.
Right. And then you're up every hour, 2 hours overnight too. I mean, yes, your husband can bring the baby to you, but I don't know. I'm the kind of person who's awake while I'm breastfeeding. It's not easy for me to like fall asleep. So, it's not easy at all. And I think that's something that needs to be celebrated a little bit more, is the difficulty of it more so than the ease of it, And so, we get to this point now. I think I wasn't in as much of a rush to wean my daughter. I was like, 18 months, 2 years, we'll see. But I noticed over those 6 months, it just kept getting, she was breastfeeding more. She was supposed to be doing less. And now she's just randomly up throughout the day. Like, I'll have
some. She's grabbing your like shirt and stuff like that. That's happened to me. You're right. Because that's what happened with Jack too, is like, you think it's going to, like, they're going to self wean, and it actually turned around just the other way, and that they're doing it even more. Yeah. Because then they know what they want. They're at an age where they could literally, 1, they could walk over to you. 2, they even have the words to be able to say what they're looking for, and be like, they're able to like pull things up. And you're like, wait, hold on. We're at the supermarket. You can't do this at the supermarket.
Right, exactly. It's like, not right now. Yeah, I had
or like at the self-checkout, like bloop, 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 bloop. You're like, no, it's not the time.
Exactly. Like, yeah. I mean, my daughter like yell. She calls it boops. We'll be driving in the car, and she's like, boops. I'm like, no, we're on the highway. I'm driving. All right.
It's true though. My son, he called it boobo. So it was similar. And even still now, I mean, he's almost 10 and he still calls like boobs boobo in general. I think he's probably going to move away from that now as the kids, talk about that kind of stuff in school, I guess. It's a different thing altogether.
It's going to be an embarrassing moment for him, maybe, but
that will be, because then he'll be calling them what he called them when they were 2, right? And now he's like, his friends will be like, "What are you talking about? I don't even know what you're saying."
Exactly. I love it. Yeah.
So let's get back to like when she was, okay, so, she was like 17 months and you're like, okay, this is it. She's going to pack it in just like her big brother did. And she didn't.
Mm-hmm. And she did.
So she doubled down. She was like going all in on it at this point.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I think since she stopped the teething, I'm getting her down to me. Like, it's all about distraction, but like, then it's more exhausting for me, right? Because I have to constantly be like, woo, instead of like just sitting and relaxing and breastfeeding her, which is much more relaxing, right? But this the thing now, and I've heard this, is that once they start, and tell me if you experience this, but once they start to get to 2.5, you start to like not like it as much, right? I don't know if you experience that, but for me, like there's things like, I have stuff to do, hurry up.
Yes. Like I can't sit on the couch and nap all day with you. Like, do I want to cuddle with you? Of course I do, but I can't do it every 20 minutes all day long.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
that is a good point. I mean, I think that when we hit like 2.5, that's when I knew. I was like, we have to just stop. Like, and I loved it. I loved the experience. I went from not thinking I would ever breastfeed to doing it as an extended one. And like I said before with my story, it's like, I ran the gamut. I fed formula, I pumped, I nursed. He had cow's milk when he was 12 months old, after he was 12 months old. Like, we did everything. We literally did everything. From not thinking I could breastfeed to extended breastfeeding to all of it. Like, we covered the gamut. But I don't even know where I was going with that though. but when he turned 2, like I said, like I knew that was when we had to do it because it became disruptive. It became disruptive with, like I said, whether it was like, at the supermarket or it was disruptive in the day where you're doing something and he gets bored and maybe he should be, I don't know, sitting on the floor playing with his toys. And instead he wants to just like sit in the couch and just nurse all day. And it's like, I love cuddling and I love nursing him, but you can't just do that as like your default activity.
Right, exactly. Yeah, there's other things in life. Let's move forward from here.
Exactly. And there's a lot of like really great resources out there as well for people who, may be interested in nursing and have some trepidation. Like I said, if there was one thing that I could sum up for my postpartum experience that like really got me anxious, it was nursing. It was like the concept of like society saying like you have to breastfeed, and then breastfeeding being so hard, and the lactation specialist being what she was. And there are wonderful lactation specialists out there. It just so happened to be the one that I got that happened to be on the shift at the hospital that I happened to be at that day. That was it. But as an industry, there are wonderful people out there. And so I'm grateful for them, just not for that one lady.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually was like, I'm done with lactation consultant, especially because it wasn't as bad with my second baby, but I definitely was not in love with the lactation consultant in the hospital. And what happened was, you have your like 2-day appointment. My pediatrician like was away or like didn't have any appointments, and they're like, it's just a weight check, and you're like not a new mom, so do you mind seeing our lactation consultant? And I was like, just to get the weight? And I was like, sure, I guess, like whatever. So I went to the lactation consultant and she did like a full session with me, and it was like the most amazing experience of my life, So I say that to say like and I have a cousin actually who I called all the time who is one as well. So, there's definitely some great resources out there. And I think, I just think it's important to know when you're a new mom, and, people are like, oh, everything's okay. But it's so true. Like whatever your journey is. And everyone, even those who breastfed, those who didn't, like all have a different story. How much they pumped, how much formula they gave. It's not so black and white as people make it seem. And there's nothing wrong with any version of it. If your kid doesn't hop
Absolutely.
on right away, there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean that you're done. It just means maybe they need a couple days to figure it out or
Yep.
whatever it may be. So,
Yep.
there's just, there's so much out there, and your journey's your journey.
Absolutely. There should be no stigma either way. As long as your baby is getting calories and that they are thriving and they're growing is all that matters. That's all that matters.
Absolutely.
I do want to add one thing that I remember about how we got my son to stop nursing is sports bras. I wore multiple sports bras. This is a true story. I wore multiple sports bras so that he couldn't access them himself.
Wow,
So
I
what
like
I'm
that.
saying is now, because they are big and they're 2 years old, like they can grab and pull, and if you're sitting on the couch, they're going to crawl over and try to like do what they can. If you have two sports bras that are really tight, they can't get there, and they may get a little frustrated because he got a little frustrated, but that did the trick.
Oh, I like that. I'm definitely going to try that one for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. And at least, like, I think right now, too, if she's even just doing it at bedtime, it doesn't, like, that's fine for now,
yeah,
but I think it's the rest,
absolutely.
it's the aggressiveness. And that's what's starting to get a little difficult about it.
Yeah, because like we said, it is sort of like disruptive. Like I said, I love to sit on the couch. I think at bedtime, it's beautiful. I think it's wonderful to sit and you could stroke their hair and hold them. And they're only going to be small for such a short period of time. So it's so important to really like soak up all of those snuggles. And I truly believe that. But like we said, if you're at the bank, at the self-checkout, like there's some times where like you just like can't do it at that point. The sports bras definitely worked. It worked for me.
That's good to know. I'm gonna try.
Yeah. So the sports bras and the limiting the duration of each feeding really helps. So you like whittle it down, whittle it down, whittle it down, put the barriers on, zip it up, wear like really, it's like Fort Knox. You just like really fortify yourself and you're good to go. And like I said, that worked for me because when the children get older for extended nursing, they're little people almost at 2.5. It's much different from when they're 6 months old or a year old. And so it's hard to negotiate with them because you can't negotiate really with the 2.5-year-old. It's challenging to negotiate with the 2.5-year-old. So you have to like Fort Knox yourself and hope for the best.
That's hilarious. I think too, real quick, like another thing that I think is interesting about this is like, did you experience lots of like judgments when people heard that you were like breastfeeding still? I feel like it's so spectrum. Like some people will either be like, absolutely go as long as you want, who cares? And then the other half of people are like, you're still breastfeeding? Like
people I think only heard about it after the fact, after we stopped, because I may have said like, oh, we just stopped, and then they would be like, you just stopped? So yes, and it goes back to what you were saying before, is like everyone's parenting journey is different. Everyone's pregnancy journey, adoption journey, all of those things, feeding journey, it's all different and it's all okay, but it's true. There's a lot of stigma one way or the other, some people are like, do it for forever. And other people are like, absolutely not. Like you have to do you, and you have to do what feels good in your heart and what works well for your family. Like that worked well for my family. Like I said, I was extended breastfeeder as well. My mom did it for, I don't even know how long. I mean, if I remember, and I really do in the back recesses of my mind, remember nursing, I was at least like 3 years old. So, It was a family thing.
Yeah, it's funny.
It's true. It's really true. So now is that an impetus for you to be like, yeah, I gotta take care of this.
Exactly. Good. And there is something to be said for, me. I know this is my last baby, so like, is there maybe some part of the back of my head that's like maybe just a little longer, there as well, but
exactly. And then the good thing is too, it's like, just because they're not nursing anymore doesn't mean that you can't still snuggle and get the snuggles and all of that kind of stuff. Even hormonally, your body, let's talk about that for a second. Hormonally, your body changes when you're no longer breastfeeding. This is totally a true story. Because I nursed so long, I didn't get my period for 2 years. And then I stopped and I got my period and I was like, Oh, that sucks. I loved not having my period. That was amazing. I loved
Very
it.
lucky. I was 4 months. That was it.
Oh, see, it
Both
happens.
my-
I don't know how or why that happened the way it did. It just happens like that. And then all of a sudden, and I just took it for granted because, after for such a long time when you don't have it and then you do, you're like, I feel like I'm 12 years old again.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Like, that's no fun.
Oh God. Yeah. That's amazing. That's reason to keep going right there. Right.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, that was part of it. But yeah, I mean, even hormonally, I think that my body had to take time to then change back into, getting your period. Obviously, you stop producing milk, all of those things too. And so you have to sort of stabilize your own hormones going through that.
Absolutely. I'm not even sure if I remember because I've been on for, oh my gosh, since like probably 2015, I've either been on like hormones for IVF, pregnant, or breastfeeding, like
Yeah.
at every time. So I don't even know what that would feel like to just be like naturally on, right? It doesn't even.
Yeah. You're like, what is baseline? I don't even know. What is baseline?
What is baseline? Exactly. So I'm kind of curious about that too. And there is that element, like I want to get my body back to myself just in like, sometimes you want to have a drink. Like I do have a drink here and there, don't get me wrong, but like maybe I want to have 3 or 4 drinks one night or
maybe we should get together after you're done weaning and then maybe we should get together to celebrate it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, that comes down to it's hard for me to like spend the night away or, all that stuff too. Yeah. So there's a lot behind it. But
there is a lot behind it. And because like there's a lot of emotions behind it. There's obviously physical stuff behind it. So it's a very loaded topic, I think, one way or the other.
Absolutely. I feel like this could be like a whole like 2-hour conversation.
It could be. And that's why I'm so glad that we brought it up today. Like I said, we brought it up as friends with each other. And I said, you know what, let's bring this to Fireside and like really let's have this conversation because I bet we're not the only ones out there that are sort of going through this.
Right. I'm sure there's people like, closet breastfeeders who aren't even, like we said, telling people anymore that they're still breastfeeding, because whenever I go to the doctor, it's like a question in my chart and like, are you still breastfeeding? Like, yeah, yes, I am. But I don't even think people even look anymore because every time they prescribe me medicine, I'm like, can you take that when you're breastfeeding? And they're like, oh no, you can't. That's what I thought. So
do you not read the chart? You don't read the chart?
Someone that's there. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Katie Mulvaney, I love you so much. I will see you next week. And like I said, every Thursday, we're going to be talking about a different modern mom problem. Sometimes we're going to be having other guests join. So it will be a 3-way call, which is exciting. A 3-way call, when saying that reminds me of like when we were like kids.
We used to do that all the time.
We used to do it all the time. So we're bringing back the 3-way calls. So I will see you next Thursday.